Hey everyone, it's Antoinette of 112 International. I just wanted to jump on quickly and share a little bit of encouragement from you. Actually, coming from a Superbook episode. If you've never heard of Superbook, it's a kids' Bible show. I've watched it from when I was younger, and they have a new version of it now. My kids were watching it this morning, and the episode was about Jeremiah, and so I was only kind of halfway listening. They were in the other room watching the episode, but the very end of the episode piqued my interest, and immediately God started downloading an immediate amount of revelation into me, and just thinking about His promises and what He's doing, and let this be lessons and waiting on God's prophetic promises. But it encouraged me as I heard it. It encouraged me because sometimes you have to press through and push through into the promises that God has. And sometimes, it may be a mismatch of expectation of timing, but it doesn't mean that God is not going to do what He's going to do. And it's not meaning that He is forgotten you by any means. And so when it got to the end of the episode, I heard from the distance in the other room that it was reciting Jeremiah 29:11. And, many people know that. But the verse, for those who don't know, it says, the plans I have for you are good plans. They're plans to give you a hope and a future. They're not to harm you. And I'm paraphrasing it. But I encourage you to read Jeremiah 29:11. I mean, it's on mugs, cups, t-shirts, everywhere. But immediately God reminded me when He gave them that verse, when He told Jeremiah to speak that was as the children of Israel were going into captivity. They were going into captivity with Babylon for 70 years. It was the beginning. They were on their way to captivity. And He was saying, the plans I have for you are good plans. They are plans to give you a hope and a future. They're not to harm you as they're going into captivity. And imagine the mismatch of thoughts in the mind of like, wait, the plans you have for us are good, but we're going into captivity. And it's in that moment that God said, oftentimes He will give you the promise as you're going towards the process. He will give you the promise as you're going towards the process so that you don't die in the middle of the process. You don't give up in the middle of the process. You don't stop short in the middle of the process. He was even reminding me of how when He kept talking about the promise of Jesus as the Messiah, there was that period of, scholars say 400 years between the Old Testament to the New Testament. 400 years. Think about that similarity with Joseph and the children of Israel being released from captivity in Egypt. Joseph in giving the promise and speaking prophetically what God wanted, at the end of Genesis 50, I believe it is, at the very end, Joseph says, and bring my bones with you when it's time for us to get out of captivity. Bring my bones with you when the children of Israel are released out of Egypt. And that was, I think, some 400 years later as well. And think about, Moses wasn't born yet. All these other things hadn't happened, all this stuff. But guess what the children of Israel did? They brought Joseph's bones. So that means somebody was holding on to that. Somewhere along those lines, those records were being kept. Somewhere along the line, God was putting it in someone's heart every single decade, every single century. Bring Joseph's bones. Bring Joseph's bones. Bring Joseph's bones. That might have been passed around the campfire. It might have been passed when they were being whipped. It might have been passed along when, loved ones were going and coming, and they remembered, bring Joseph's bones with us. And so Joseph was prophetically speaking into it. He didn't know how much time it was going to be. He didn't know how much time it was going to be until they were released. And again, when God gave that promise of Jeremiah 29:11, that the plans I have for you are good plans, they're not for evil. They're plans to give you a hope and a future. They were going into captivity at that moment. But He was reminding them, my plans are good. I know it doesn't look good. I know it doesn't feel good. I know what's around you is not equating to what you expect a promise from God to be, but I have good plans for you. And so remember, even right now, God has good plans for you. You may feel like I'm in the wilderness. This doesn't feel like a good plan. Maybe you are on the beginning stages of going into a season where it's like, this doesn't feel good. Maybe you're at the end stages of the season and you may feel, Lord, when is it going to end? Maybe you just got out of it and you're in, quote unquote, the promised land, but you still are letting your mind debrief, so to speak, rest and regroup from what you just came through and said, is this too good to be true? Am I going to be in captivity again? And God keeps saying, the plans I have for you are good plans. They are not for evil. They are to give you a hope and a future. So remember that right now, the plans that God has for you are to give you a hope and a future. The promises that he has made to you and that he has for you are for a hope and a future. And it may feel like, you know what? This isn't matching up, Lord. I'm going into a hard situation right now. And I say that even for myself, this year has been challenge after challenge after challenge. And God keeps saying, I'm bringing you out on the other end. The plans I have for you are good plans. They are not for evil, to give you a hope and a future. He's had me constantly declaring even what's called the prayer of Jabez continually over and over. Over and over, and just thinking about how that matches up in First Chronicles 4:9, Jabez, his name meant sorrow. When he was born in sorrow. He was born in pain. His mother named him Jabez because she had pain in the middle of his birth. But yet Jabez said, Lord, bless me indeed. I know my name says sorrow. I know my circumstances say sorrow. I know things are hard around me. But Lord, bless me indeed. Enlarge my territory. Place your hand on me. Keep me from evil so that I do not do harm. And in the same way of Jeremiah 29:11, the plans I have for you are good. Bless me indeed. They are not for evil. Keep me from evil. They are to give you a hope and a future, that I don't cause harm, that you enlarge my territory. So I encourage you, may God bless you indeed. May he enlarge your territory. May he keep his hand on you. May he keep you from evil, and that you cause no harm, because the plans he has for you are good plans, to give you a hope and a future. They're not evil. They're not evil. To give you a hope and a future, and expected in Jesus' name.